Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, I am showing you a deck which I didn't know about, which just won essentially the equivalent of a League Cup in Japan. And it's great. And I love it. I need to, as we get going here, give a huge shout out to the lovely Code64 over on Twitter, he was the guy that sent me the winning list of all the Naganadel decks we've been looking at for Japan lately. And I sent him a message and I said, dude, that's awesome. What else you got for us? And he went, how about Sylveon Unown? A deck that was totally not on my radar. Now, the Unown here is wonderful. It's Unknown Hand. And Unknown Hand is a great, super interesting card. So much so that the video I did about these cards were actually, because there were 3 of these Unown, were actually among the most popular ones I've done for a while. Now, Unknown Hand has got a ridiculous ability that says if this is your active Pokemon and you have 35 or more cards in your hand, you may choose to win the game. Which, of course, you will at that stage choose to win the game. And I've seen all kinds of ideas and deck lists floating around. My friend Dave has been working on this for ages. And the list that's been coming out of Japan that was sent to me by the lovely Code64 is one that I was not expecting. It's actually based around Sylveon. So the idea here is very, very simple. What you do is you have Unknown Hand, and you just want to pop it down, pop it in the active and say, I win. But before you do that, you've got to get 35 cards in hand. How do we do so? We do so using, amongst other things, Sylveon GX. Now, what we're looking for here is the attack, which allows us, Magical Ribbon, to search our deck for any free cards and put them into our hand. And this is awesome. This is nice. Because first of all, it means that at the end of our turn, we end up 3 cards better off. We have 3 extra cards in our hand. And of course, the entire point of this deck is try and get as many cards in hand as possible. But we can also search out cards, which next turn will allow us to increase our hand advantage even more. So we essentially search for cards that allow us to get more than 1 card using them, and then we're golden. So for argument's sake, we use a Sylveon to search for a How, and then on the one hand, we've got 3 extra cards in hand, but next turn we play the How, draw 3 cards, and actually that Sylveon has turned into 5 cards rather than 3. Sounds good. This is not a deck which is aiming to have one giant explosive turn, where we suddenly draw 35 cards. This is a deck which is trying to stay alive for long enough to get all of these cards in our hand. So in terms of other Pokemon here, obviously we're playing the Energy Evolution Eevee, because you need to get your Sylveon. You really want a turn 1 Sylveon here. So what you do is you use the Energy Evolution Eevee, which means that you can attach a Fairy Energy from your hand, search for Sylveon, and then of course you've got 1 energy attached, so you can just go down the whole Magical Ribbon route. And life is golden. But there are other Pokemon we need to use here. This is actually a deck, I kid you not, that plays a 4/4 line of a Alolan Sandslash. This is another one of those cards that I have been mentioning since the second it was released as someone's going to use this at some point. Someone's going to use this at some point. Someone's going to use this at some point. Ladies and gentlemen, some point has arrived. This plays a 4/4 list. The ability is incredibly straightforward. Once during your turn, you may draw a card. But in theory, if you've got 2 of these on your bench, you draw 2 cards. 3 of these on your bench, you draw 3 cards, and so on and so forth. Another great card that's played here, and I am convinced that this either is going to see a huge amount of play, or people are wrong if it doesn't. It's the Alolan Meowth we looked at the other day. One of the ones that was so good it got its own video. Now, it's got 60 HP, which is important because it can be searched out with Professor Elm's lecture. More on that in a moment. But it's got an attack for 0 energy, which says if it is your first turn of the game and you are going second, This attack does 70 damage for 0 energy. Now, if we look at the rest of our deck here, it's just a whole bunch of single retreat Pokemon. So you can essentially use your energy attachment for the turn to retreat, and then pop a Alolan Meowth up and do 70 damage. As we look through this deck, you're going to see that you essentially should be able to get a turn 1 Alolan Meowth whenever you want. So if your opponent goes first, has a Pokemon with 70 HP or less, then you can just win the game essentially guaranteed. And there's a whole bunch of Pokemon out there like Inkay, like Zorua, like Slugma, and there's a whole bunch of others. These are just examples, like Poipole, that have 70 HP or less, and this gives you an instant KO. This will give you cheeky wins. This is a card that will win the game if your opponent passes with one Pokemon of 70 HP or less, and there are a lot of those around at the moment. The other card we see here is Virizion GX. Not a Pokemon I am a huge fan of, to be perfectly honest, but one that fits a need in this deck. 1 colorless energy, double draw 2 cards. But it's the GX attack we really like. 1 colorless energy, breeze away GX, put any number of your Pokemon in play and all cards attached to them into your hand. This is the money moment for Virizion GX. Because you see, you can have 2 Sylveon GX on the field and 3 Alolan Sandslash on the field, and maybe the Sylveon's got an energy and a tool attached to it, and all of a sudden you're picking up 5 stage 1s, 10 cards, plus an energy, 11 cards, plus a tool, 12 cards. That, ladies and gentlemen, is great. Double draw is good in the early game. It's not as good as searching any free cards, but drawing 2 is still better than nothing, but it's a GX attack that lets you win the game here. Now, at this stage, I need to stop and address the elephant in the room. If your opponent plays a Judge or a Marshadow to force you to shuffle your deck, that is really, really bad. We also saw that in Japan at the moment, Team Rocket's Harassment is actually seeing play. It's a Judge to 5 rather than a Judge to 4. Both players get a new hand of 5 cards. It's like a Judge in that it makes your opponent reshuffle their hand, but it's not quite as annoying for you as a Judge might be. If one of these cards comes down when you're about to win, that sucks. One of the bad things about Virizion is you pick up all of your bench Pokemon and then you pass turn because you've just attacked. And you need to wait till next turn to bench an Unown and get it in the active. That is not good because that gives your opponent a turn to play a Judge, and if they know you're playing Unown and you've just put like 12 extra cards in your hand, your opponent is going to want to play a Judge. Boo. Now, that is awesome, to be perfectly honest with you. I love the Pokemon line here. It is super inventive. I don't think I would have got this Pokemon line in a million years. In terms of energy, there's actually quite a lot of energy here. There's 10 basic fairy. Because you want the energy for Virizion, you want the energy for Sylveon, and you do want to be able to retreat. All your Pokemon are single retreat, so that means that you need to be able to retreat them, and you only need 1 energy to do so that you can get Unown into the active. I should point out at this stage, Alolan Sandslash actually has a retreat cost of 2, not 1, which is why we're playing 4 switch. But generally speaking, that's only going to end up in the active if your opponent uses something like a Guzma, so you don't need to worry about that too much. You need to be able to retreat your Pokemon, you need to be able to attack with Sylveon and Virizion. That is why you need to play a decent energy count here. Now, in terms of the trainers, this gets very interesting. We've got Nest Ball and Great Ball here in terms of Pokemon search. Nest Ball gets a basic. Great Ball gets a Pokemon from the top 7 cards of your deck. Nest Ball is really good because it gets your Alolan Meowth, it gets your Eevee, it gets your Virizion. They're basically the ones you need early. The reason this deck cannot play Ultra Ball is because you need to get cards in hand. Ultra Ball, you play a card and discard 2 to draw any Pokemon. You swap 3 cards in hand for 1 card in your deck. No, that literally goes against the point of this deck. You can't do it. We also have free Professor Elm's Lecture here, which lets you search for any free Pokemon with 60 HP or less and put them into your hand. Good for getting your Pokemon, but it also turns 1 card in hand into free. That's very important. And then in terms of draw cards here, draw supporters, we've got free How, draw 3 cards from the top of your deck, and free looker, draw 3 cards from the bottom of your deck. And the reason we play these is very simple. We want to draw cards. Cynthia makes us shuffle our deck into our hand. No. Lily only draws us cards if we got a small enough hand. No. What we need in this deck is pure, don't worry about what else is in your hand, draw. In that instance, the best we can do is How and Looker. So why do we play 4 of each? Because we're only allowed to play 4 of each. Looker's not exactly any better than How. How's not really any better than Looker here. We just play 4 of each so we can have 8 of these draw cards in total. That's very, very important. Now we play 4 switch here because we need to be attacking every turn. We need Sylveon or maybe Virizion every single turn. Alolan Sandslash has a retreat of 2. If your opponent Guzmas it, that gives them time to find something like a Judge. No, we're playing 4 switch. And finally here, we see 1 of each of the Fairy Charms. The Fairy Charms here give you immunity from EXs and GXs of that particular type. Psychic, Grass, Dragon, or Fighting. And essentially here, well, there's 2 things this does. First of all, it might buy you a turn or 2, which gives you time to get the cards in hand. Secondly, you attach them to your Pokemon, and then you pick them up with Virizion to win the game. And that's 4 extra cards in your hand. So it's good because it only protects fairy Pokemon, I should point out. So it's good in that it can protect Sylveon, which is generally going to be your attacker. But it's also good that when Virizion picks up the Pokemon, that's an extra 4 cards. This is a nerve-wracking deck, because if your opponent just starts smashing all your Pokemon early, you might lose before you got enough cards in hand. If your opponent drops a Judge or a Marshadow or a Team Rocket's harassment at the right time, you're going to end up losing. But if you can get your Alolan Sandslash out, draw a whole bunch of cards, and then use Virizion's GX attack, you'll win the game. This is not how I expected Unown Hand to be played, but I absolutely adore it. The other thing to bear in mind with this deck, if I haven't made that clear enough, in the same way you want to attach all your tools, you want to attach all of your energy. You want to attach an energy every turn here. You don't want to run out of energy, obviously, but you want to make sure that all of your Pokemon have an energy attached, so that when you pick them up with Virizion, you're picking up more cards. The other thing to bear in mind here is you need to be super careful when using Virizion, because if you pick up all of your bench using Virizion and then your opponent gets a one-hit KO, you're out of Pokemon and you lose the game. The list is up on the screen. It has been for a little while now. The only other thing I really want to point out here to Virizion, because you're not taking prizes, what if one of them's prized? Free Unown Hand, because you're not taking prizes, what if one of them's prized? Chances of 2 Unown Hand being prized, pretty slim. Chances of 3 being prized, almost none. You can take prizes here. Alola Meowth can take prizes. Sylveon, if you get free energy on, can take prizes. You don't really want to, but it is possible if all of your Unown are prized. So there we go. A very weird deck over in Japan that went and won a League Cup. I didn't expect it to happen. I love that it happened. I am delighted. But I want to know from you guys, do you think this is viable? Do you think this is a good way to play this deck? Or do you think it's destined for failure? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But do be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And do make sure you're checking out Wasi Plays. We are deep diving into the Transformers TCG at the moment. I think it's awesome. You should check it out. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.